Hi, everyone. It's so great to be back in Toronto. I have such amazing memories from the years I spent living here and working here in Toronto when we began running the Birthright Israel program across Canada. It's particularly fitting for me to be here speaking about the power of one, because those early days where we were working to scale up Birthright across Canada taught me so many lessons and opened so many doors, including this one, because I remember meeting Rabbi Lipner and hearing about the idea of this organization called The House back in around 2004 for the very first time. Tonight, I want to share with you four lessons that have become my rules and tools for effecting change through the power of one. Over the past decade plus, I've had the extraordinary fortune of working alongside many talented people in creating a global network of young Jewish changemakers. My organization, ROI Community, is an initiative of the Schusterman Family Foundation and has a mission to be a network of thousands collectively connecting millions to Jewish life and to Israel. Today, we are nearly 1,000 strong members serving in Jewish leadership roles in some 50 countries around the world. Members connect with one another, and they work to create more opportunities to connect more and more people in meaningful ways. These are lessons that I've picked up along the way, and they're also lessons that I've heard a lot about sprinkled throughout all the talks here tonight. Rule number one: solving really wicked problems takes more than a person. It takes more than an organization. It takes a network. Now, a lot's been said about the power of networks for social change, and honestly, I don't think it can be overestimated. Really wicked problems facing the world require complex and multidimensional solutions, solutions that would find many different individuals and organizations working in coordination with one another in order to achieve mutually reinforcing goals. I listen to leaders who think with a network mindset. They understand the primary law of networks, that value expands exponentially with the number of connections within a network. Networks, as opposed to organizations, excel in distributed action. As a result, they are more resilient. Networks are also more fertile for creative collaboration and for scaling up. For me, the best way to understand this is by looking at the most popular and highly accessed websites on the internet. 9 out of 12 of the highest trafficked websites are platforms that enable connections between people. Think Uber, Airbnb, Google Search, Amazon, Facebook. None of these companies are selling you a product directly. They are all brokering between you and someone else. In some cases, you're getting, and in some cases, you're giving. These platforms are essentially networks. They are a set of connections that enable people or things to connect, share information, exchange products, services, or insights. Rule number 2, focus like a laser. Okay, in coming to Canada, I just couldn't resist this reference. And by the few laughs in the room, I can tell that I'm dating myself. Rule number 2 is once you can envision how the stars might align to achieve a big change, it's time to focus like a laser on what your specific role is, or in what your specific role, what specific role your organization will play in making that change. But it's not just articulating a goal. A goal needs to be SMART. SMART with capital letters. S for specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time-bound. With all the research that's out there, the real news and the fake news, it's more important than ever to be clear about what we want to achieve. And it's easier than ever to fall into a trap of addressing the wrong problem. I'm often reminded of a story of a building owner who was receiving complaints about the slow elevator in her building. She immediately assumed that an expensive solution would be required, a new lift, a new motor, and she was dreading what was to come. But then came a suggestion from one of the tenants. Why don't you install mirrors in the waiting area around the elevators? And lo and behold, after implementing this cost-effective solutions, complaints about the waiting time stopped. The lesson here is to make sure you're tackling the right problem. In the Jewish world, for example, dozens of reports over the last 30 years have served as engines for funding programs aimed at dealing with intermarriage. But what's the problem we're trying to solve? Are we fighting against an outside threat that we have a fighting chance of succeeding? Or are we struggling to make our communities more welcoming for those who want to join them? Rule number 3. Rule number 3, chutzpah. I'm going to assume that everyone here knows what chutzpah is, either because you've been the subject of it or because you are it. Here's the thing about the power of one to affect change. I can't think of one that didn't demonstrate at least a dash of chutzpah. Think Rosa Parks, David Ben-Gurion, Golda Meir, Mark Zuckerberg, and even the less well-known names. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one of my personal heroes from this stage, a woman by the name of Judy Feld-Carr, who's from here, from Toronto, who spearheaded the efforts to save Syria's Jewish community. For me, humor and chutzpah are musts for any activist's toolkit. Back in 1999, I learned this lesson at one of those Jewish Federation's annual General Assembly conferences that I think took place at the time in Atlanta. My friends and I were hanging out in some hotel suite when we learned that former Prime Minister of Israel, Arik Sharon, who at the time was the leader of the opposition, was in town and was going to be addressing the GA. Sitting around this suite, I jokingly picked up the phone and connected to the hotel operator and said, "Hi, can I please be connected to the room of Mr. Arik Sharon?" "Yes, 1 minute, sir." Next thing I knew, I was talking to Arik Sharon on the phone, requesting that he come to our room to meet with 25 eager student activists and a kilo of kosher smoked meat. What's worth noting, though, is that when someone recently posted this photo on my Facebook wall, I counted that the majority of the people that you see in this picture are still involved in some kind of Jewish leadership role. And for me, that says early experience with the right dosage of chutzpah goes a long way in building character. Character that is key for the resilience it takes to solve wicked problems. Tool number 4. The strength of weak ties. The strength of weak ties. In our age of unprecedented connectivity, we have so many technological tools to connect with people, to learn about their perspectives, and to allow those perspectives to influence and shift our own, in theory. In practice, most of us reside in our comfort zones, where we are surrounded and exposed to ideas that very much reflect our own thinking. Even on Facebook's vast social network, we are largely confined to the posts and opinions of our friends. While we are seemingly connecting to so many people, we're actually very comfortable in our echo chambers, where we simply incubate our own pre-existing notions. But there is a way to avoid the echo chamber, and that is to see the strength in weak ties. Consider this. Most of our close friends tend to move in the same circles as we do, and therefore they're privy to pretty much the same information as we are. Our acquaintances, meaning our weak ties, know people that we don't, and thus receive more novel information. By maintaining connections with our weaker ties, we allow ourselves to be exposed to perspectives that are fundamentally different from our own, and we give ourselves the chance to grow by having our assumptions challenged. There's no more perfect example than the speech just before me by Megan and David. At ROI, we run gatherings all over the world, and we work hard to bring together people from vastly different backgrounds and perspectives. Jews of color, Jews who are gay, Jews who are intermarried, ultra-Orthodox Jews, secular Jews, right-wing Jews, left-wing Jews, Jews with unique abilities and those with disabilities. No one tries to convince others that their particular perspective is absolute truth. They engage in dialogue, they recognize each other's right to be wrong, and believing that fundamental differences of opinion, there is tremendous value in learning about and from one another. I want to wrap up this amazing night with a keen reflection on the times that we live in. On the one hand, there's a lot of great things going on in the Jewish world. It is arguably the most exciting time to be Jewish. Here are just a handful or a screen full of network-minded initiatives that are changing Jewish life around the world. The House here in Toronto is also one of these, employing smart goals with chutzpah and by activating weak links. Actually, my friend and colleague Mike Savitovsky, our host tonight and the House's new executive director, is someone who could write a book on affecting change by activating weak links and setting smart goals. But I have to be honest, the glass, unfortunately, isn't totally full. It often feels like the better we get at addressing our challenges, the greater the challenges become. And the urgency to address those challenges is also increasing. It's kind of like a frustrating hockey game when your team is playing amazing and you're scoring at every chance, but you're still not winning. Does that sound familiar, Toronto? The challenges are only getting more wicked, and they're going to demand more and greater abilities to solve. As a community, as a people, we need to address issues of access and inclusivity in Jewish life. Xenophobia in general and anti-Semitism in particular is on the rise. Israel's path as a Jewish and democratic state is under scrutiny, and the democratic fate of our beloved city of Jerusalem are just a few of the wicked problems our generation needs to tackle. It's been said that a single twig breaks, but a bundle of twigs stays strong. This is perhaps the greatest illustration of those 4 lessons, my rules and tools for effecting change through the power of one. We, as individuals and as a people, have infinite strength. We only need to realize that our greatest source of strength lies in the ties that bind us. Thank you.